Okay, so you've binged the entire 365 Days trilogy, and now you're left with a Massimo-sized hole in your life. The big question is, what could possibly fill it? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to figure out. Look, if you got totally sucked in by the drama, the glamour, and the, let's just call it, very controversial romance between Massimo and Laura, you are absolutely in the right place. But we're not just going to give you a list. We're going to dig into why you loved it and find other shows that hit those exact same buttons.
Think of 365 Days as our home base. It's our guide for exploring this whole universe of movies and series that are all about power, desire, and obsession. But, as you're about to see, they each tackle those themes in some really fascinating and very different ways.
So our journey starts by really getting to the heart of what makes 365 Days so addictive.
I mean, let's be real, the whole premise is completely wild, right? A mafia boss kidnaps a woman and gives her 1 year to fall in love with him. It's this high-stakes, morally murky fantasy, and that specific formula is our jumping-off point.
So, if the thing you loved most was just that raw, high-octane intensity, that sheer passion of it all, then you are going to love our first recommendation. It's right up your alley. For this one, we're heading to Mexico for the Netflix series Dark Desire. Now, if you've ever looked for shows like 365 Days before, I'm willing to bet this name has popped up. And you know what? There's a very, very good reason for that.
When you put them side by side, you can immediately see the shared DNA, you know? You've got the dangerous, super charismatic guy, the forbidden desire, all the explicit scenes. But here's the big difference. Where 365 Days is this escapist fantasy, Dark Desire takes that same formula and twists it into a full-blown psychological mystery. It gives it a much, much darker flavor.
So, the show follows a law professor named Alma. She has this weekend fling with a younger guy, Dario, but it quickly spirals into a deadly game of obsession, manipulation, and even murder. It gives you all that passion you're craving, but it's wrapped up in a story that's way more twisty and suspenseful.
But what happens when that passion isn't just some chaotic force of nature? What if it's calculated? Let's shift away from that raw desire and into the cold, hard game of conquest, where love is less of an emotion and more of a weapon.
And that brings us to an absolute 90s cult classic, a film that pretty much wrote the book on toxic romance, and it's even been rebooted recently as a series. Of course, I'm talking about Cruel Intentions.
Okay, so the settings could not be more different, right? We're swapping the criminal underworld for the toxic, privileged world of the Manhattan elite. But here's the thing, the core idea is exactly the same. Both of these stories are about a conquest, a cold, calculated game to manipulate someone into falling in love. At the heart of it all are these two bored, incredibly manipulative step-siblings, Catherine and Sebastian. They make this cruel bet over whether Sebastian can seduce the headmaster's innocent daughter. It just goes to show that for them, love and desire aren't really feelings at all. They're just pieces in a much bigger, more sophisticated game of power.
All right, now let's talk about the vibe, the aesthetics. A huge part of what makes 365 Days so appealing is that glamorous, high-fashion world it's set in. So our next two recommendations share that exact same stylish setting, but they use it as a stage for totally different kinds of drama.
We're going to look at two international series here, Devotion from Italy and Etta from Argentina. Both use that sleek, beautiful world of high fashion as a kind of pressure cooker for some really intense human drama.
First up is Devotion. Now, it shares the Italian production and that high fashion feel with 365 Days, but that's pretty much where the similarities stop. Because while 365 Days is big, aggressive, almost like a fairy tale, Devotion is this quiet, grounded, slow burn drama about real relationships falling apart.
This show is all about a marriage in Milan that just starts to slowly crumble as both the husband and wife find themselves tempted by other people. So if you want something less fantastical and more of a sharp, really emotional look at what happens when trust disappears, this is the show for you.
Then on the other side of the fashion world, you have Etta. It also uses the industry as a backdrop for a really intense romance, but its focus is way more cynical. Forget the whole captive romance thing. Etta is all about backstabbing, revenge, and the friction between different social classes.
The story follows Ada, who's a really successful fashion designer. She gets involved with this mysterious model who comes from a totally different world. They have this instant, passionate connection, but what she doesn't know is that the whole thing is secretly being fueled by his hidden plan for revenge. Okay, so we've looked at thrillers, power games, high fashion dramas. For our last section, let's kind of zoom out and look at the one powerful theme that connects all of these. What is the secret ingredient here? It's this idea from the world of dark romance called unspeakable sins. And this is the genre that's all about grappling with taboos, with moral corruption, and with the seriously destructive consequences of pure, unfiltered obsession.
And that right there, that's the real connection. Whether it's through kidnapping or manipulation or cheating, every single one of these stories is about what happens when desire pushes people over a moral line. This whole exploration of the lust of the flesh, as one source put it, is the addictive core appeal that 365 Days just tapped into so perfectly.
So, whether you find it in a mafia fantasy, a tense psychological thriller, or a glamorous fashion drama, the one thing that truly unites all these stories is their shared obsession with testing the absolute limits of human desire. Which really leaves us with one final thought to chew on as you dive into your next binge watch. In stories like these, what really is the line between an all-consuming passion and a dangerous obsession? Thanks for joining us.